Hi, it's the Mike Rogers Show here with you and Mike Rogers. And today we have a very super special guest who's been famous for a long time, very famous in Japan. And her name is Nikki Corvette. Nikki Corvette is the singer of the best known member of the band Nikki and the Corvettes from 1977 to 1981. Nikki grew up in Detroit, Michigan. She was always fascinated with music. And at 16, 16, she ran away from home because her mother refused to let her attend an MC5 concert. So in late 1977 or early 78, a friend of hers arranged for Nikki to headline a concert at a bar. At that time, she was not a member of the band, and she spent the next few weeks organizing Nikki and the Corvettes. So, ladies and gentlemen, won't you give a big hand with me to the one and only Nikki Corvette? Hi, Nikki. So, Nikki, can you introduce yourself to us?
I'm Nikki Corvette. I don't know what you want me to say. You just pretty much gave my musical intro.
Well, do you play the piano? Do you play the guitar? Do you sing?
I sing. I used to play guitar, but I tried it on stage once, and about halfway through a song, I looked down at the guitar and went, "Oh, right, I'm supposed to be playing this." Because I was too busy singing and dancing around, and I just decided that there was enough going on without trying to play guitar.
Yeah. There aren't very many girl groups who the singer is playing an instrument too. Well, there are starting to be some, but back in
there's a lot now.
Yeah, back in those days, I don't remember that ever seeing a girl playing a guitar. I've seen a lot of girls in the 70s playing bass, but
Runaways, Go-Go's. It wasn't as common as it is now. You know, it was hard being female in rock and roll in the 70s.
So do you feel that you, the one and only Nikki Corvette, you are very responsible for how things turned out?
I think I'm part of the ones that showed the way. I'm sure there's people more important than me or that did more, but I did fight the good fight. You know, I got thrown off of shows for there being girls in the band. When I had guys in the band, they didn't really want to play with me, and they said that they didn't have to listen to me. And I'm like, the band is Nikki and the Corvettes. I started this band. I wrote all the songs. It's my band. And you either listen to me or you're not in the band.
Very good, Nikki. So wait, so you just mentioned that you got kicked out of places because you were
we got thrown off shows when they found out there were girls in the band.
Really? Like, for example, when? Do you recall any specifics?
I do. I'd rather not say, because some of the shows we got thrown off of are people that I was friends with the bands, and I don't think it had anything to do with them. I think it was management and club management, band management. I don't know. I don't really know the reason. I don't know why they didn't want to be on shows with us. They didn't really know anything about us. So
that's really strange. Do you know, I don't want to talk about me, but do you know, Nikki, I was in a band in the late 70s. What was that?
No. What kind of band?
I was in a punk band. So we played a lot of shows and we got kicked out a lot. And they never told us why we got kicked out, but we used to go play at Battle of the Bands, you know? And there would be all these really terrible bands. Like, so this was 1977 too. these really terrible bands that sounded like the Eagles or Fleetwood Mac or whatever. And we would come up on stage and we would say that we were the band before us and that they were us. So we got kicked out a lot. And it's a good memory.
Well, when it happened with us, it was, not like the day of the show. We'd have a show booked, and all of a sudden someone would, call and say, oh, you're not doing this show anymore. But a lot of times, like if it wasn't the club that did it, they would give us, other shows to make up for it. And a lot of times it worked out better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you, God. That's good. So, Nikki, do you know that, like, I'm a radio DJ, right?
Yes, I do know that.
Did you know that I play almost all female bands all the time? That's all I play.
I didn't know that for sure, but I did know that you play a lot of female bands. Because
they're the best. I think they're the best. And I'm going to be recording a show later today, and I got your song on there. I don't even remember what the name. Love Me and one more. Yeah. So it's going to be really cool. So you ran away from home because your mom didn't allow you to see an MC5 concert. I mean, if I was your dad, I probably wouldn't allow you to go to an MC5 concert either.
Well, I have to say, looking back on it now, she was probably right. It was at places I shouldn't be at, hanging around with people I shouldn't have been hanging around with. But it was the MC5.
Yeah.
That was really important. And, I did move back home, but I did leave to go see the MC5 and actually wrote a song about it when I was with the Stingrays called Diary of a Rock and Roll Girl. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of based on that because I have diaries from like, I don't know when I stopped, but all through the 70s and 80s, I have diaries of, what I did, where I went. I have lists of, because I used to go see every rock and roll band that came to Detroit. And so I'd keep a list of like who I saw and who was there and where it was and what I wore. And sometimes I look back on it and there's so many bands that I don't remember seeing, but I know that I did.
So you've got these diaries, so you should, what do you call it? Compile them into a story, put out a book and make a movie, shouldn't you?
I'm actually thinking about doing a book. Everybody wants me to do a autobiography, and there's a lot of stories that are really good stories, but I don't necessarily want to tell them. And so I was thinking, I was thinking I could do a book called Diary of a Rock and Roll Girl and have, excuse me, flyers and pictures, and I could tell some of the stories, just throw in a story here or there, talk about what it was like. I like writing for short attention spans because let's face it, a lot of people reading books about rock and roll don't have the longest attention spans.
No.
Including me. I get distracted very easily. So I just think that would be cool. It's progressive through the years, and I can include stories and pictures and flyers and tell the stories I want to and not feel bad about the stories I'm not telling. And it would be different than what everybody else does because I read a ton of rock and roll biographies. And I gotta say that they're really depressing. The majority of them are super depressing. And I want something that's not. I want something that's fun because it should be. Rock and roll is fun.
Well, of course you're familiar. You know Pamela DeBar?
Yes.
Do you know her personally?
I don't think I do.
I know her. I know her very well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she helps people like you. to write the book or whatever. And after we're done here, I'm going to send you her email address, and I'm going to introduce her to you. I mean, if you want me to, and then
Sure.
Just tell her that you'll write to her and then talk to her.
Okay.
I got to write that down or I'll forget.
I know how that goes. I did write another book. I wrote a book in the 90s called Rock and Roll Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to write a book that talked about how all these different rock stars died, like give like a synopsis of their life and their career, how they died, where they're buried, just a couple pages on everyone. And, I was just kind of screwing around doing research, and a friend of mine called me one day because I had been talking about it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a literary agent interested.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, he's like, you have to send him a chapter. I'm like, I haven't started writing. He's like, well, you have a week. And so
okay, a week, sure.
So I said, okay, and wrote a chapter and sent it to him. And he said, okay, I want to handle you, and I have a publisher interested. And then the next thing you know, I had a book deal.
Wow.
That's kind of how my life goes a lot of the time.
That's really cool. So I'm thinking that you should, I don't know if this is the way it is now, but make a book and write a screenplay and then make a movie and be a producer of the movie.
I don't know about that. It's something to consider, but
making a movie is impossible. If you're making a feature movie, you come up with the idea, you start making the movie, and then if it gets completed, that is a miracle.
Well, do that.
No, it's a miracle, but it's quite a rewarding thing, I have to say. So, I also make movies.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So do you know Rain Dance Film Festival in London? That's the big one in London.
I don't know that I do.
Yeah. So, they got Sundance, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Rain Dance is the British one.
I like that.
And all of my films have world premiered there. Why did the Corvettes in 1981, why did they break up?
Band drama, and there wasn't one reason. It just seemed like it had run its course. The guitar player at the time wouldn't fly, so we couldn't do anything but the US.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like it just seemed like it ran its course. We weren't getting anywhere, and like fighting, I'm sure, and we went through a ton of musicians, ton of girls, and I don't know that we broke up or just, it just kind of stopped.
Oh,
it was a long time ago. It's hard to remember.
Yeah. But yeah, I can imagine. So like my band only lasted a year. So we were done by 1979. We were done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started working for Rodney Bingenheimer.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, what really killed punk rock for me at that time was Sid Vicious committed suicide. I cried that morning when I saw it in the newspaper. Were you a big fan of the Sex Pistols?
I was a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a big fan. I don't especially like the kind of person that Johnny Rotten, Lydon, whatever is, but I did like the band.
I interviewed Johnny Lydon in 2018. in London. And everybody, the staff, everybody hated him. Oh God. And he was really rude to me and stuff like that. And when it was over, the producer said, that guy's terrible. I'm never going to have him here again. And I was like, well, what did you expect? It was everything I expected, you know?
Right.
So anyhow, so what punk band did you like? You liked the Ramones?
Love the Ramones, Clash, Blondie, even though they're, not so much a punk band.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, they were considered punk.
Mm-hmm.
I liked a lot of different music. I've just always loved music, and I like music that's different. That it's like when Bowie came out, he was different than anything else that was going on. When the MC5 and the Stooges were playing, there wasn't other stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't like the mainstream. I mean, I'll listen to stuff. There's some great catchy songs.
Mm-hmm.
Not something I'd go out and buy. It's not something I'd go out of my way for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to deny that I'm not going to say it's not good. I'm just going to say it's not my favorite.
Uh-huh. So do you have a favorite band now?
I really like Måneskin.
Måneskin?
Yes. When I first heard Begging, I had it on my phone, and every single person I knew, like, we'd be hanging out. I'm like, I got to play you this song.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, okay. They're like, that's cool. And I got to see them at Lollapalooza last year, and I just really like them. It's like what I was saying before. They're different than most of the stuff that's around, and everybody is like, oh, I don't like them because of Eurovision or whatever. But you do what you do. You can't judge a person or a band entirely by how they try and get themselves heard and seen. I really like what they're doing. I like a lot of their songs.
Wow, that's cool.
I'm sure there's a ton of other bands. I have a bad habit of, like, somebody will ask me a question like that, and then like an hour later, I'll be like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said this. So all you bands that I love, I'm sorry, I can't think of you right now.
I have the same thing. It's called CR.
Is full.
Yeah. So I read in a magazine that when the Corvettes started, you imagined the Corvettes to be like a I guess that's Shangri-La meets the Ramones, bubblegum punk or bubblegum punk or whatever, for lack of a better term. Was it a bubblegum punk band? Or
it really was, because I wanted to be in a punk band, but obviously no matter what I do, I'm not gonna look that punk or sound that punk. I'm happy. I sound poppy. But the guitar player wanted, he was more into, like, he loved punk too, but he wanted things to be more melodic or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a great singer. I have my own style.
I think you're a great singer.
Here's what I say about my singing. You always know it's me. You'll recognize my voice. I have my own style, my own sound.
Yeah. That's what makes you great.
Well, thank you. But, it was like it was me and two backup singers, and, we would dance and sing in unison. So it was very much like a girl group with a punk band behind us.
Mm-hmm.
On stage, I was way more punk than I was on record, because nobody could tell me what to do. In the studio, they're like, here, do this, try this. On stage, I had total control.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, on stage, we were much more of a punk band, and it was wild. But I don't know that that's what we set out to do. It's just how it evolved. And there really haven't been a lot of bands like that with three girls in front and, a punk band behind them.
Yeah. Are you familiar with they're from Detroit, and what's their name? Shadow Show.
Yes.
Do you like them?
I do like them.
Yeah, actually, I've been playing them recently too. And Rodney played a song of theirs. I think it was last week. They were so happy about that. So yeah.
The first time I heard myself on the radio was the first night I was like, we had driven from Detroit to LA, and we were staying at the Tropicana Motel and listening to Rodney. I think he used to be on Sunday nights then.
Yes.
And he had Jan and Dean on the show, and they were talking about this new record they put out, because the first single we put out was on Juvenile Delinquent Records, which it was just like my mom's basement. We pressed all the records, we made all the sleeves ourselves, and that's just what we called it. And so because it was JD, Jan and Dean were saying, yeah, this is our new record. And then they played, Young and Crazy, and we kind of all looked at each other and went, wow, we're on the radio. And Jan and Dean said that this is their song. And it was Rodney's also the first radio interview I ever did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Rodney is such a nice guy. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
Right.
He's just such a nice guy. Okay, so I'd like to end part 1 here, and then let's go to part 2. And this has been the Mike Rogers Show with today's special guest, the one, the only, Miss Nikki Corvette. Thank you.